Welcome to It's English podcast, where English feels easy, calm, and natural.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to It's English podcast, the show that helps you speak English clearly, confidently, and naturally. I'm Mary.
And I'm Brian. Hello, everyone. I am in a great mood today.
You say that every single time.
That's because recording always puts me in a great mood.
That is really sweet. So what's making you extra cheerful today?
I had my morning coffee.
Ah, coffee, your greatest companion.
Excuse me? English is my greatest companion. Coffee is a close second.
Good save. Now, before we get into today's topic, everyone, if this podcast is helping you grow your English skills, please follow the show and pass it along to one friend who is also on that learning journey. When you practice with someone else, progress happens faster.
Absolutely. And do not just sit back and listen. Get involved. Pause the podcast. Repeat the sentences. Take the examples and use them in your actual day.
Exactly. All right, Brian. Today's topic is one that trips up almost every learner.
Uh-oh. Tell me more.
These three little words: though, although, even though.
Yes, the trio of confusion.
Be honest, did they ever confuse you?
When I was first learning, absolutely, yes.
Because they look alike, they sound alike, and a lot of the time they feel the same.
That is the heart of the problem. Many learners assume they are completely interchangeable.
But they are not. Think of them as close cousins, not identical twins.
I like that image.
So, today we are going to walk through each one slowly and simply, with real examples. No pressure.
No pressure at all, just clear understanding.
All right, first question. What is the job of though, although, and even though?
They show contrast.
And for anyone who needs a refresher, what is contrast?
Contrast is when two ideas are opposite, or when one idea creates a surprising result. For example, I was exhausted, but I completed the assignment. Being exhausted usually means stopping, but here, surprise, you kept going. That is contrast.
Well said. Now listen to this. I completed the assignment although I was exhausted.
Same idea, different structure.
Right. Instead of using but to connect two short sentences, we combine them into one with these connector words, and that's where though, although, and even though come in. Let's start with although. Although is calm. It is straightforward. It carries a slightly formal tone.
Give us an example.
Although it was raining, we went for a walk. Simple, right? Rain usually keeps people indoors, but they walked anyway. That's the contrast.
And you can also say, we went for a walk although it was raining. Both versions work.
Exactly. The position is flexible, at the beginning or in the middle of the sentence. Both are perfectly correct.
But here's an important rule, everyone. Never say, although it was raining, but we went for a walk.
That's what we call a double connector, using although and but together. It's incorrect. Pick one.
Choose although or but, not both.
Now let's talk about though. Though is more common in everyday conversation. It feels lighter, more relaxed.
For example, though I was tired, I went to the party. Same meaning as although, just a more casual feel.
So the difference between though and although is quite small.
Very small, but here's something really useful. You can place though at the end of a sentence.
For example, I didn't enjoy the film. The soundtrack was brilliant though.
We cannot do that with although.
Correct. Although cannot sit at the end. Only though can do that.
It sounds completely natural in conversation.
Very natural indeed. All right, now I think this next one carries the most weight.
You're right. Even though shows stronger contrast, more emotion, more surprise. Example, even though I prepared for weeks, I still failed the exam.
Ouch, that one stings.
Exactly. It tells you the situation was serious or unexpected. Here's another one. Even though it was freezing outside, they went swimming.
That's wild.
Which is exactly why we use even though to express, wow, that really was unexpected.
Let's line them all up using one example, a rain scenario.
Great idea.
Although it was raining, we played football. Though it was raining, we played football. even though it was raining heavily, we played football.
The last one feels the most dramatic.
Exactly. So here's a simple way to remember it. Though, casual. Although, neutral, slightly formal. Even though, strong contrast, emotional weight.
Now, let's put this into a real situation. You're worn out, but your friend invites you out for the evening. What do you say?
You might say, I'm tired, but I'll come. Or, although I'm tired, I'll come.
And if you want to be a little dramatic,
Even though I'm completely exhausted, I'll come.
exhausted already sounds more serious than tired.
Yes, and even though matches that heavier feeling perfectly. All right, what are the most common errors learners make with these words? Two main ones. First, combining but with although or even though. For example, although I was tired, but I went out. That is incorrect. The right version is although I was tired, I went out.
And the second mistake?
Using even though for situations that are small or ordinary. For instance, even though I was a little hungry, I ate. That sounds overly dramatic. Save even though for situations where the contrast is strong or genuinely surprising.
Yes, strong or unexpected contrast. That is the key. All right, listeners, small challenge. You are unwell, but you still go to work. Pause the audio and form a sentence using although.
Here is one version. Although I was unwell, I went to work.
Good. Now try it with even though.
Even though I was quite unwell, I still went to work. Feel the difference? The second one carries more weight.
Let's talk about the emotional side of these words one more time.
Although, simple contrast. Though, relaxed, natural in speech. Even though, emotional, strong contrast. It's not just grammar, it's feeling.
English is not only a set of rules, it is a way of expressing emotion.
Beautifully put.
Let's do a quick sample conversation. You start, Mary.
Although I'm not a big fan of horror films, I watched one last night.
Oh, really? What happened?
My friend insisted on it, and even though I was frightened, I kept watching the whole way through.
That's impressive. I'm not into horror either. The background score was fascinating, though.
Perfect placement of though at the end, Brian.
So, what should our listeners take away from today?
3 things. 1, all 3 words express contrast. 2, never combine them with but in the same clause. And 3, choose based on the emotional strength of your situation.
And practice. Always practice.
Yes, use them in daily conversation. Write small sentences. Say them out loud.
I want to touch on something. Even after understanding the meaning, many learners freeze up when it's actually time to speak. They understand it mentally, but in the moment, the brain stalls.
That's so true. Knowing something and using it naturally are 2 different levels. So let's dig deeper into sentence structure and rhythm, because the hesitation is often not about meaning, it's about how to build the sentence.
Right. Should I start with although or put it in the middle?
Let's slow it down. You have 2 basic options. Option 1, although plus subject plus verb, then the main sentence. For example, although I was nervous, I delivered the presentation. Option 2, main sentence plus although plus subject plus verb. I delivered the presentation although I was nervous.
Is there any difference in feel between the two?
A slight one, yes. When you open with although, the contrast feels set up in advance. When you place it after the main idea, the focus shifts more to the action itself.
So if I say, although I was scared, I spoke, the fear leads. But if I say, I spoke, although I was scared, the speaking is the headline.
Exactly. A small shift, but it changes the emphasis.
Let's use a real scenario. Someone's quite shy, but they decide to launch a YouTube channel.
You could say, although she's shy, she launched a YouTube channel. Or for more emotional impact, even though she's very shy, she launched a YouTube channel.
And listen to how the emotion shifts. Although she's shy, ordinary contrast. Even though she's very shy, wow, that took real courage.
The even though version elevates the story.
Can we use these connectors with negative sentences?
Absolutely. For example, Although I don't enjoy coffee, I drink it occasionally.
That sounds like you, Mary.
That's different. I don't enjoy it, but sometimes I need it, which is actually a perfect contrast example.
So you could say, even though I don't enjoy coffee, I drink it every single morning.
Yes, and that version highlights the internal conflict more clearly. Sometimes when learners use although, it can sound overly textbook. How can they sound more natural?
In spoken English, though is often the more natural choice, especially in casual conversation. For example, I did not sleep much. I feel fine though.
We do not always need long, complex structures. Sometimes we split the idea across two shorter sentences.
Exactly. Instead of, although I did not sleep much, I feel fine, you can say, I did not sleep much. I feel fine though. It's shorter and much more conversational.
Can tone change the meaning? Like, if I say, I enjoyed the food though, does it suggest something went wrong?
Great observation. When though appears at the end, it often softens a criticism or balances a negative. For example, the film was long. The acting was strong though. It implies overall, maybe not perfect, but here is one positive.
So it's a polishing tool.
Exactly. Instead of saying the film was disappointing, you say the film was not great. The visuals were stunning though. Much more tactful.
So though at the end shows social awareness.
It really does. Let's go a bit further into even though. When is it really the right choice?
When the situation feels unfair, difficult, emotionally heavy, or genuinely surprising. Example, even though he apologized, she couldn't forgive him. There's weight in that sentence.
That one feels heavy. Another example?
Even though they trained for months, they were knocked out in the final. That's painful.
Compare that to, although they trained for months, they lost. That's factual, but even though adds the emotional layer.
Exactly. In storytelling, if you want emotional power, even though is your go-to.
All right, quick challenge. I'll give you a situation, Mary. You choose the best connector.
Ready.
Situation 1. It was slightly chilly. You went outside.
Although it was slightly chilly, we went outside. Not dramatic enough for even though.
Good. Situation 2. The temperature was minus 20 degrees. Someone went swimming.
Even though it was minus 20 degrees, they went swimming. That's extraordinary.
Perfect. Situation 3. You disliked the color, but you bought the jacket anyway.
I didn't love the color. I bought it though. Very natural spoken English.
Let's act out a small scene. You're my colleague, and I'm venting about my job.
All right, go ahead.
I feel like I've hit a wall at work. Although the pay is solid, I'm just not fulfilled.
You used although there because you're balancing two real facts, the salary and the lack of satisfaction. Now I'll respond.
Go for it.
Even though the salary is good, your sense of purpose matters more.
And even though carries more emotional support there.
Yes, it tells you, I hear the weight of this. I take it seriously.
There's one more mistake worth mentioning. Some learners say things like, even I was tired though I finished. That's mixed up.
Yes, the correct structure is, even though I was tired, I finished. Or, I finished even though I was tired. Keep the structure clean. Connector, then subject, then verb.
No half-built sentences.
Exactly.
I think one of the biggest barriers is simply fear. Learners overthink, they pause too long, and then the moment passes.
Here's the truth. Even though you make small errors, people will still understand you perfectly well.
Nice use there.
Thank you. Communication matters more than technical perfection. If you spend too long searching for the ideal word, the conversation loses its flow.
So sometimes just use but. That's completely fine.
Yes, although complex sentence structures sound more advanced, a clear, simple sentence is just as powerful.
Can I ask, was there a moment in your real life where even though really matched what you felt?
Yes, when I first started speaking in front of an audience, even though I was nervous, every time I kept showing up.
That's exactly where even though belongs. What about you, Brian?
Although I did not pass my first written English exam, I signed up again immediately.
That's real life, full of contrast, full of all those and even those moments.
Let's try a quick exercise. Say a sentence without contrast.
I was anxious.
Now add contrast.
Although I was anxious, I tried anyway.
Now make it stronger.
Even though I was deeply anxious, I tried anyway.
You can feel the level of emotion rise with each version.
And here's something beautiful about language. When you say, even though I was scared, I spoke, you're not just forming a sentence, you're telling a story of strength.
One last layer. How does a learner develop the instinct for which word to use?
Exposure. Listen to English in real contexts. Films, interviews, podcasts. You will start to notice patterns. In casual conversation, though shows up frequently. In emotional storytelling, even though tends to appear. In formal writing or presentations, although is the natural fit.
So the environment guides the word.
Exactly. Casual conversation calls for though. Neutral or formal contexts lean toward although. Emotional or dramatic moments belong to even though.
What about academic or professional writing?
In an essay or report, you would write, although digital technology brings significant advantages, it also introduces new challenges. That sounds polished and professional.
I would not use technology has benefits, it also has challenges, though, in a formal essay.
Right. That reads as conversational. The register of your writing shapes which word feels appropriate.
You mentioned earlier that even though is powerful in storytelling. Can we build an example?
Of course. Even though he was raised in a tiny remote village, he became a celebrated international artist. Feel the contrast?
That is inspiring. The gap between where he started and where he ended up, even though, makes that gap feel significant.
Now remove even and use although. Although he was raised in a small village, he became a celebrated artist. Still accurate, but the sense of wonder is softer.
The emotional punch lands differently.
And in motivational contexts, even though life dealt her difficult cards, she never stopped moving forward. That sentence carries real power.
I sometimes hear a natural pause before though in spoken English, like, I liked the cafe, though it was a bit pricey. What creates that pause?
That pause is rhythm. In speech, contrast often arrives with a slight hesitation or a shift in tone. Try this version. I liked the cafe. It was a bit pricey though. Notice how though acts almost like a gentle correction, softening the observation.
Like a polite way of saying, but here is one small reservation.
Exactly. It's contrast delivered with courtesy.
One more question. Is I was tired, but I finished weaker than although I was tired, I finished?
Not weaker, just different. But is direct, quick, and efficient. Although sounds more deliberate, more structured. Both are entirely correct. When you're speaking quickly, but is completely natural. Don't feel pressured to reach for a complex connector every time.
Fluency first, complexity second.
Always. Even though advanced grammar sounds impressive, being understood clearly matters most.
Is there ever a moment when even though sounds too intense?
Yes, for small, ordinary situations. For example, even though I was a little drowsy, I watched some television. That's too dramatic for the moment. Better to say, although I was a little drowsy, I watched TV. Or simply, I was a little drowsy, but I watched TV.
So always match the emotional level of the word to the emotional level of the situation.
That's it. Language is balance.
Let's wrap up with one last casual exchange. I'll go first.
Go ahead.
I was not really feeling the first half of the series.
The finale was worth it, though.
Very natural. One more. You start.
Although I had rehearsed quite a bit, I still made a few errors during the presentation.
That's okay. Even though you made errors, your delivery was confident.
And even though emphasizes there that the errors didn't diminish the achievement.
You know, I think contrast sentences are actually life sentences.
Say more.
Because life is full of even those. Even though learning English feels slow sometimes, you're making progress. Although you make mistakes, you're growing. Even though confidence doesn't come overnight, it grows a little every time you open your mouth.
I love that. It feels motivating without being over the top.
That's the gift of these connectors. They let you hold struggle and strength in the same breath.
All right, everyone. Let's close with a quick summary. Though, casual, flexible, and it can come at the end of a sentence. Although, neutral, structured, slightly formal. Even though, strong emotional contrast.
And never place but alongside them in the same clause. Choose based on emotion and context, then practice using them out loud.
I believe today we cleared up a long-standing point of confusion.
Not just the rule, the feeling behind it. That's real progress.
Absolutely. Everyone, make sure you're following It's English Podcast. Share this episode with one person who always pauses and wonders, which one do I use here?
And most importantly, even though English can feel challenging sometimes, don't stop speaking. Although fluency takes time, showing up every day is what wins.
And even though confidence doesn't come overnight, it grows a little every time you open your mouth.
We'll see you in the next episode.
Keep speaking. Bye for now, everyone.